We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved the May 2nd, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Hearing none, under Mayor's comments, I just did want to comment that yesterday was First Responders Day. I had an opportunity to tour some of the sites across the county, and I just wanted to voice our appreciation for all the work that all of our first responders do, and particularly our own fire department, which put on an excellent display yesterday. So thank you to them all and good work. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of April 18th? Councillors Short, Reed, and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Short, Reed, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved the April 18th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no public meetings today or delegations, no presentations, and no consent agenda. So the next item on the agenda is building a bylaw and the report on the municipal accommodation tax.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So, pardon me. So before you today, I have the report based off of the MAT tax bylaw, including the red line version of the MAT tax bylaw that came forth from the county level. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. At this point in time, I believe Scott Ovell gave 2 presentations that were quite extensive. So pending that, if there's any other questions, we'll attempt to answer them for you today.
We did have a fairly extensive conversation about it last time and came to an agreement on the 4%, but are there any questions from council? Councillor Barry.
Just on collection and remittance, there's the area that's scratched out and it says suggest removing, not collecting from short-term rental broker, X Airbnb and Virgo, as this would require separate agreements. I'm not really, I don't really understand what's being removed or what's being suggested. That was the one that I just didn't find clear.
So
it would just have the black, and then it would, I guess if it just has the black information, which is every provider shall collect MAT from every purchaser at the short-term rental accommodation is purchased, that would be it.
Through you, Mary. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted clarity. I wasn't sure. Because it said suggest removing, but I didn't see it removed. But that's clear if that's just the black line that would be in.
Any other questions? So I guess we look for a mover and a seconder to receive the report. And I'm assuming the bylaw would be later on the agenda. So could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillors Short, Reed, and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Short, Reed, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved council receives report BLDG 824 regarding the draft municipal accommodation tax bylaw for information, and that council approves the municipal accommodation tax bylaw as presented and directs the bylaw to be brought forward.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is the Line Fences Act.
Yes. So the Line Fences Act is provincial legislation that's been in place for quite some time. And at this point in time, it appears that provincial legislation would have been more so back in the day when we had large agricultural properties, long division line fences to try to separate out properties, crops, livestock. It appears that in today's day and age, townships are opting to resolve themselves and remove themselves from the act, from enforcing the act, which is legislatively permitted. And it just doesn't appear that those type of situations would sort of need to arise to fall on township to make the decisions, whereas it generally resolves themselves either between the neighbors, or they can deal with matters civilly on their own. So at this point in time, we're basically proposing the exemption bylaw to remove the township from enforcing that provincial legislation.
And we don't presently have a bylaw in place.
No, we do not.
Okay. Questions? Okay, so I would ask the mover and a seconder to receive the report and the recommendation. Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved, the council receives report BLDG 1024 regarding Line Fences Act for information, and council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report to proceed with option 1 to enact a bylaw to exempt the township of Algonquin Highlands from the Line Fences Act, and the council directs a bylaw be brought forward for adoption.
All in favor? That's carried. Well, that was easy.
Yes, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Next up, Parks, Recreation and Trails. And the first item for discussion is the Quagama Lake Russell Landing retaining wall questionnaire that you've developed.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Council, and thank you, Mayor. So before you today is a questionnaire related to our planned project for a retaining wall rehabilitation at the Russell Landing on Quagama Lake this year. My intention is to, following this with approval, put this out to the community, both by mail and online through Bang the Table. Proponents will have the opportunity to submit either way. When we do mail outs, we would include an envelope with prepaid postage for resending it, and anybody who wants to submit it back by paper, we would then compile ourselves into Perfect Minds, so I could compile all of the answers, bring them back to council for their consideration with recommendations based on our discussions between staff and our consultant, and then work any of that into our final design plans, which would then go to tender. Just to give a brief overview of what's happening with this project, the main intent of the project is to address a deteriorating retaining wall, which is right along the parking area at this landing, while at the same time assessing the integrity of the retaining wall that goes out onto the spit of land out to the docking there, which includes some stone work and a wooden structure retaining wall. The main questions I have for the community are to what extent the retaining wall that we're being replaced may or may not be being used for any mooring, particularly whether or not it's being used for mooring things like construction barges or larger boats or construction access, those types of things, because right now there's no protective barrier like a railing between the parking area and that retaining wall. So we'd be looking to incorporate something like that, but we need to take that into consideration. It is a unique site in that we don't have a boat launch there, but we do have boat launches in other locations on the lake. The boat launch that is there is serviced by the marina just adjacent to it, where they charge a fee for access. So this provides an opportunity for us to ask some questions about where it is that people are using for their launching services, whether or not it affects our other locations to take into consideration for future. Same consideration for parking. We're asking questions about related parking and whether or not there's a need there. It's not the intent of this project, but it may build into future considerations as we develop our parking master plan, et cetera. So today I'm looking to council for approval to go ahead with this questionnaire, or any feedback or anything that council feels may be relative to add.
I think this is an excellent approach. I think you've done a good job on developing the questionnaire. I did have a question from one of the executive members of the Quagum Lake Association, who asked if, once it was approved, that they could put it on their Facebook page. And in one other site, they also wanted to put it in their summer newsletter, but it seemed to me that maybe the summer newsletter might be a little bit late, that more online access to it would be better. But I'd look to members of council for comments or questions about the questionnaire and approach. Councillor Shortreed.
So I think a lot of contractors use that as well.
Mhm.
Do you want them to answer the survey?
I'm not planning at this time to send it out to contractors, no. It would be sent directly to anyone we have on the roll file as tax-paying properties on that lake.
Okay, I just see them there all the time, so that's why I was
Mhm.
wondering.
Councillor Berry.
I think it's a great letter and great questions. I just wanted clarification. What exactly is the difference between a launch and a landing?
So when I'm referring to a launch, I'm talking about the boat launch facilities. So sometimes they're gravel, sometimes they're concrete, but the location that somebody actually launches their boat. I refer to all of our locations as landings. The landing would be everything associated with the location that we have listed as our assets for lake access. In this case, it's only the parking and the docking without the boat launch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report and approve the questionnaire? Councillors Richards and Berry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives Park Recreation and Trails Report, PRT 524, regarding Quagama Lake Russell Landing Retaining Wall Rehabilitation Community Questionnaire for information, and the council directs staff to proceed with the questionnaire as outlined in this report.
All in favor? That's carried. The next item is a loss of boat ramp facilities request for assistance coming from a 3-lake chain, Boshkung, Little Boshkung, and 12 Mile Lake. If you'd like to tell us a story about that.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I'll give an overview of the situation, as well as the letter that's been received with some requests from the 2 lake associations that exist there, and then some various options and their considerations, as well as some updates since this report was created. So essentially, the marina that's on 12 Mile Lake that has serviced the 3-lake chain of Little Boshkung, Boshkung, and 12 Mile Lake for many years will no longer, it's sold and it's no longer providing marina services. The boat launch that's there is a deep water boat launch that facilitates the launching of the majority of the boats on the lakes. It's a much deeper launch than what we offer at our location on Highway 118, where our launch there is really only designed for smaller aluminum style boats because it is a shallow launch. This leaves all of the lake without any option to get their boats out after they've been launched this spring. This is something that's happening in the very near future. The sale is set to close in June. The current marina has indicated to anybody who has their boat start or has used that marina for launching services up until now that they will launch their boats if they want them to over the coming weeks before the closing. And then following that, the understanding is that that boat launch will be no longer available for any purposes moving past that. So as such, we have received a request letter from the lake associations asking for some assistance with this issue and with some recommendations from them on how we might be able to assist. Just to highlight, the Three Lake chain does have almost an even split of taxpayers between Algonquin, Highlands and Minden. The only other boat launch that we're aware of and the associations are aware of is our launch on Highway 118. I'll highlight some considerations about another location that may be a possibility in Minden Hills on 12 Mile Lake in just a moment. But the various options that the Lake Association is presenting is first, the possibility of us dredging our launch on Highway 118. Which is something that would need to be assessed. If council would like to go that direction, my recommendation would be to first engage our consultant who we typically work with on landings to have them assess the site and make recommendations on it. I have went over there and taken a look at it relative to that, and with the assistance of our public works manager. And the success of which that would have is questionable, just because the location is it's a large sandbar. The shallow area is what I would call a couple of football fields in size. It goes out a significant distance in every direction. So I would, without a thorough assessment, hesitate to go in that direction. Next is the possibility of upgrading our launch. We don't currently have any upgrades planned in the near future at that launch. This one is lumped in our asset management plan with 14 other launches that are all considered in fair condition. That would be behind 4 other ones that are currently in poor condition that would take precedent as planning ahead of those. So presently, we don't have any plans for increasing any access there or building any sort of new boat launch structure there. If we wanted to go that direction, it is something that, again, would have to be assessed. We would need to first determine what the property boundaries are, being uncertain as to whether or not the possible locations there for building a deeper water launch are on our property or on MTO property. So that would really be the starting point. Based on recent project costs that we've experienced, I would assume that would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range to complete, and would be a multi-year project. The other option that has been brought to our attention, and we've since been able to have a discussion with Minden about, the mayor and myself have had a discussion, and our CAO have had a discussion with the CAO and mayor in Minden, and there's a possibility of a launch that exists on shoreline road allowance on 12 Mile Lake. It's a shoreline road allowance owned by Minden. And there is private property leading up to it. So there are a number of steps that would need to be taken to go in that direction, just to find out what the legal implications are, the access possibilities are. But right now, in discussion between us and Minden, they are agreeable in assessing that as a possibility. And given the circumstance, it would, right now, not knowing all of the details associated with it, it's a very good possibility that would likely be the most cost effective if the access could be worked out. There is a note and a question about emergency access that the association did bring forward in their concern about emergency access at our existing boat launch and how that might be affected. I have talked to our fire chief about that. They are aware of this circumstance. They have taken the opportunity during training nights to go down and actually launch their boats at that site and don't have any concerns about access there. So that is not a concern for our emergency access purposes. So from here, looking to council for some input on which direction we might want to go, and highlighting that we do have our planned project there this year at Russell Landing. So any significant staff time or input, if we did want to go in the direction of a development type project, would likely need to be redirected towards that. So looking to council for thoughts and feedback on how to move forward.
During meetings that we've held with representatives from the lakes, Chris and I have both made it quite clear that any upgrade of the 118 site is a substantial ask, and they seem to think that this is something that could happen by this fall. And given the approvals required, the amount of work that's required, that's just not, we don't see it as being something that's possible. With respect to responsibilities, I know that there's an even split basically of residents between Algonquin Highlands and Minden Hills. And when they talk about, approximately 800 residents that are impacted, I'm not sure that number is actually accurate, whether it's 800 people who have boats that cannot access or would not be able to be taken out of the water in the fall. But probably a fair number of them are. I know that the mayor of Minden Hills is hoping, rather than Minden Hills assuming responsibility, that there can be that the new owners of the Twin Lakes Resort would assume responsibility for developing a launch. I mean, there would have to be some cooperative effort, like a license of occupation for them to access the shoreline. And them to agree to use there's a strip of land that the Twin Lakes owns between the Shore Road allowance and the road. So there's a little bit of planning that would have to be done there. And, I mean, I would hope that that would work out, but I have gone so far as to suggest that, if we can find a reasonable solution, that there might be some willingness to share responsibility for this because of, the number of taxpayers that are in Algonquin Highlands. So to me, we have to assess levels of responsibility. We have to decide whether or not we want to actually go forward and do an assessment of the 118 site and see what we're really faced with. Do we want to adjust priorities for projects that we've got? As as Chris has stated, this 118 site would be like fourth down the line, as far as the condition of other sites. And whether we want to assist in whatever solution is found. And we've made it quite clear that there may be other options that the lake associations have to consider about using, local marinas to help them take their boats out in the fall. Even to the point where, they might have to get a crane for some of the boats that have got a really deep hull. Anyway, I would look for questions and comments, thoughts from council on where we move forward with this. Council Perry.
I support, initially working with Minden Hills with the property proposed here that has something already sort of started. I have launched from the one on 118 and it is a huge sandbar. I can't see how to change the depth of that without cost and disturbing that. I guess if that the part by the dam didn't work out and then we had to then revisit the spot on 118, is that something Minden Hills would be cooperatively wanting to go in on as well? I guess that's what I would want to know. My first intention is the dam location, looking into that.
Well, that would be the best option. I mean, it would cost the least amount and work out well, assuming that there weren't too much of an uproar from neighboring properties there. And the Twin Lakes Resort owners, they're brand new owners. Whether they would see that as a viable thing to do to establish it. I'm sure that they've got a lot of work that they want to do there. Whether this would be, a priority for them is yet to be determined. And quite honestly, I'm not sure if Minden Hills would be willing to support us in costs to upgrade our site on 118. I would be interested in maybe, as Chris has recommended, that maybe we do at a minimum an assessment of that site just to sort of confirm what's being suggested by Chris and our Public Works folks. It is one thing to say that there's no problem launching a boat there right now, but we don't know what sort of water levels we're going to have in the fall. And if in fact it would be a problem for everybody in the fall. Councillor Richards?
I just want to say, thank you for your work on this because it is kind of come out of nowhere that we're put into this position. I'm wondering if anybody has been able to speak with the new owners, see if there's any willingness at all to allow people to use that launch into the fall.
The new owner of,
The new owner of the Wedgwood Marina.
we have not been able to find out who the new owner is.
That's what I
That
thought.
seems to be a secret for some reason or other, nor has there been any inquiries, although the listing indicated that it would be good for residential development. There's been no discussion that we're aware of with the planning department in Minden about, what would we need to do if we wanted to do a residential development or some other kind of something other than a marina. And I mean, I've written to the Wedgwood Marina and have received no response, asking them how they propose to remove their fuel tanks and the boat launch without benefit of a permit. And no response. Now, Mayor Carter has spoken with the owners of the Twin Lakes Resort, and they did sound open to doing something, but that was a very initial discussion, and they don't. I'm not sure that they're fully aware of everything that would be required of them and what the cost would be.
And I can't imagine, most places, I would say charge $10-20 to launch. And given the cost of that this would potentially be, I can't imagine it being a viable business option without some government support. Whether that's from us, from Minden, from wherever. I think I'm certainly willing, and I hope we are willing to do something to help. But I'd like to see Minden Hills come to the table on that as well, and that we do this jointly between us. I'm concerned about the launch on 118. Even if we were able to figure out a way to make it a deeper water launch, the environmental impact of that would be quite high, but also the traffic on 118. For it to be a more utilized launch, I think would be dangerous without some substantial changes there too.
There's not a lot of room there, and we don't know, actually, we don't know who owns the land that the launch is attached to.
And so, because it's been such a short amount of time, and we've been trying to find solutions as quickly as possible, I'm wondering if, as we go forward, we could look if we do have any other available property that would be appropriate. If the Twin Lakes shouldn't work out.
Yeah, and I don't believe we do have anything else, but that's, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and on that note, I did touch base with the planner to see whether or not we may own a parcel somewhere, and we don't on any of those lakes.
Go ahead.
Is there perhaps crown land that we could negotiate for, which I realize is a long time coming, but just to have a backup idea of something, should the Twin Lakes not work out.
That is something that we could investigate, whether there's any crown land available that we could access, but I completely concur with your comment that it's a shared responsibility. It's not our responsibility to completely resolve an issue that is actually in Minden Hills. But keeping in mind that there are a lot of our taxpayers that are impacted, and that's where my, idea that there's shared responsibility. I do kind of like the idea of assessing the 118 site, so we have a better idea. And that assessment would have to determine like who actually owns the land there. Is it MTO land? Are we going to have a problem with that? There's a number of things, questions associated with that, but I'm not sure what council thinks. I mean, it's not a lot of money. I don't know if we have funds in reserve that would cover that cost to do a bit of a review.
Certainly, there is money available in reserves for docks and landings that council could access.
Madam CAO?
I've just had the information from the planner that there is no cram land available around Boschco.
Well, quick turnaround on that one.
Yes.
Well, that answers that question. Councillor Berry?
I personally would like to proceed with looking further into the Twin Lakes property launch and possibly come June discussing options with the new owner of Wedgwood. And then going possibly into a consultant review of the 118. I would rather have the money that's in reserve go towards the project than looking at a site that preliminary doesn't look environmentally great or financially feasible.
But doing a preliminary view would give us some answers to what would be required, should we find ourselves having to go ahead with that. There will be no negotiating with the new owners of the Wedgwood site. The basic term of the sale is that the launch be removed and that they will not be operating as a marina. End of story. So that's not an option. I mean, obviously, we would like to move forward with seeing how we make out with the Twin Lakes property and the access point there. And I think, Mayor Carter has been having discussions with them, and I'll sort of keep in touch with him to see where that's at. Otherwise, there's a real anxiety on the part of these people for us to do something and do something now. And, one of the things is, well, buy the marina. Well, the marina's already been sold and we're not going to buy a marina.
Mhm.
And there's so many steps involved in trying to do any kind of upgrade at the 118 site that it's not something that can happen. It won't happen this year. I just don't see it happening. And, there have been other discussions, there's an owner of a local marina who's been saying, oh, you can get that done in no time flat. But things don't work that way with municipalities with the levels of approval that we need to get. So, we can coast for a little while just sort of keeping an eye on what's going on with the Twin Lakes site, but I don't see a solution being in place by this fall, except possibly there. Angie?
I'm just wondering, and maybe Chris could help with this answer, is what are we looking to get from an assessment? Because part of that assessment will need to include like establishing a new launch. And council maybe if council can give that answer, whether there's an interest in that or not, because we know that that's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, at least it would tell us how much it would cost, what's truly involved, the area that would need to be dredged, who owns the land.
But the assessment won't tell us that. A survey would need to be done. So that would be on top of that. And I guess the assessment would tell us whether or not the area could be dredged. Is council interested in that? So I guess, Chris, maybe if it's okay with you, Mayor, that if Chris could help fill in those blanks for council.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and what I had in mind when I was suggesting the potential costs of an assessment would be assessing for whether or not a potential dredge would work. Looking at the site myself, and in my opinion, and in the opinion of the public works manager as well, just a quick assessment and looking at the soil conditions there, it seems unlikely that it would work. However, all we can see is the top soil that's there. our
When you, I'm sorry, Chris, but when you say whether it would work or not, are you talking about whether it would work at all or for sort of the length of time that it would work and we'd have to do it again? Like we could dredge it, I have no doubt, but how long would that last?
At all, whether or not it would work at all. And the reason being is that the shallow depth extends a couple 100 meters in every direction. So what I look at it as is you'd need to dredge probably 200 meters out into the lake in sand. And I think the sand would just fill right back in almost immediately. You know, just as simple as if you've ever tried to dig in wet sand, it just collapses instantly. The wave action at that location and the wind action, the reason there's a sandbar there, and if you look anywhere on those lakes, every side of the lake on those ends of the lakes have sand and beaches. So there's constant wave action, there's constant sediment being moved into those locations. So if you did find favorable soil conditions, and by that I mean maybe what we're seeing is just a little bit of sand on top and then there's better soil underneath, and let's say you were able to dredge out 100 or more meters and maintain that for several years, my experience with other locations that we've had to do a little bit of work at the end of a landing over time, it's usually, you know, several years that it lasts. But again, those are just all assumptions, just standing on shore looking at it. I think what our consultant would do is they'd be able to come out, they'd have professionals that would be able to tell us environmental considerations, whether or not that's even something that would be possible right off the hop. From an environmental standpoint, as far as permit approvals go. And then from that, looking at the soil, they may have ways of determining whether or not the soil would be stable enough. And then I'd ask them to, from that, give us a written recommendation that I'd bring back to council. If we wanted to include some information around developing the site, I think that would be more in depth, probably upfront. I'd just look to offer some points and have a discussion with our consultant about them, that we'd come back to council afterwards and say, you know, here's the potentials that exist. And here's the scale at which they might lead to if we did want to do construction, because I'm looking at the spot. There is an opportunity to build a deep water launch further down the shore next to the bridge. There is deep water there, but the unknowns are, again, that could very well be on MTO property. So the next step would be to pay for a survey to find that out. And I'd want to know from the consultant right up front, because there's flow through there. It's close proximity to the residents right across the waterway there. So I'd want to know whether or not there's any considerations related to that. But this amount would be to start with just looking at the feasibility of dredging the site.
Councillor Richards.
Do we have any ability whatsoever to intervene? Maybe through Wedgwood, in trying to have a conversation to exclude the existing launch and perhaps, you know, jointly purchase it with Minden Hills to keep it existing.
Jointly purchase what?
That section of the property that has the launch.
I would say no. I mean, I don't think that there's any opportunity for that to happen.
But could we attempt to try?
Well, there's been discussions that, I mean, we can't even find out who's buying it
Mhm.
and what they want to do there. You know, the thing is that the one condition to the sale is removal of the fuel tanks in the boat launch.
Right. Which would
I
require-
don't see our ability to intervene in a private sale.
Not normal, but
I'm thinking there might be legal ramifications to try and stopping a real estate sale. And to purchase, and I honestly don't know the property, whether it's one piece of property or two. But if we were successful at something like that, I'm supposing there would need to be a severance of property. So again, that's, you know, certainly down the road.
Counselor Berry.
And there's no access points on Bosch Kong? Big Bosch Kong?
No.
No, and to that point, not that I'm aware of, even in consideration of whether or not there may be one existing at a local resort, et cetera. From communications with the lake associations, they have assessed that avenue as well. I've had some discussions in those locations and they haven't been able to find any interest. And if I could, Mayor, to the, sorry. Oh. To the point of potentially purchasing a property, and when we're thinking about potentially developing our existing site and knowing that it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars just based on other projects that we've done recently, at that point, I think it would be worth starting with an overall assessment of what the best site would be, as in there may be multiple locations around the lake that may be available for purchase that may fit the needs and may be more cost effective than developing the existing site, but that would have to be part of that assessment.
My personal inclination to start with is to go with Chris's recommendation that we do hire a consultant to confirm some of the assumptions that we've made. Just to take us a little bit further on the 118 site, I'm not, and that's not committing us to, you know, to doing any kind of improvements or changing our list of priorities, but at least we would be, you know, we're getting some confirmation on some of the assumptions that we've made. One thing that was brought to my attention yesterday actually was the fact that it's a nesting area for trumpet swans and loons. And I have seen the swans there and, you know, I mean, so I thought, oh, I don't know if that's, you know, that would probably be another consideration. Councillor Shortreed.
And I think that's going to be a big one, is the environmental impact on 118. So I'm strongly agree with the working with Minden Hills for the other one.
For the other one,
12
for
mile,
Twin Pines.
Twin Pines.
Well, we definitely will continue to do that and see how that goes, because that's our best opportunity. But you know, to me, I'm thinking, okay, if that doesn't work out for some reason or other, we just sort of need to move a little bit further ahead, be more firm in the information and knowledge that what's required and what we can't do. Councillor Richards and Councillor Berry.
Yeah, I think we need to move forward with a backup plan beyond 12 Mile and Twin Lake. But I think that assessment may want to include checking out the entire lake to see if there's any better location. So I mean, we at this point today, we can agree to start with that assessment to clarify those assumptions, but I think it may need to expand to look at the entire lake or the entire lake system to see where the best location would be.
But, you know, as we've already learned, there's no crown land parcels that we could utilize. I mean, then you're getting into, you know, private land. And I mean, when you said like buy the site where Wedgwood is, I mean, that was up for sale for $1.7 million. And I would never agree to that.
So my concern though is that right now we're in this position because of the decision of a private landowner. If we go with Twin Lakes Resort, we're putting our lot in with another private landowner. So that's not ultimately maybe the best solution. We have to look at that. It may be the best immediate solution, but is it going to be long-term? Reality is the cost of land on lakes is high. Cost of owning a marina and operating a launch is high, but it's needed. So I think we need to look at not just the short-term, but the long-term solution here.
Well, and, you know, there is, you know, in the long-term planning for docks and landings, that we have other lakes that have no access points. You know, and how do we prioritize that? Because I can hear immediately, well, if you're going to develop a new, you know, public boat launch there, what about us? And it's a really good question. I think Councillor Barry and then Councillor Shortreed.
Um, I do agree with looking long-term. I personally feel, I know it's, 2,000 to 5,000 is still, some would say a little bit of money, some would say a lot of money. I just wonder, is there an opportunity to work jointly with Minden Hills, even on that report and consultation, or working with a consultant? Because no matter where people are launching, whether it's, down at 12 Mile or up on 118, it is still
We can,
access for both taxpayers.
we can talk about that possibility, although it was my impression that Minden Hills were not prepared to spend any money on this.
Hmm.
Now, whether that would change over time, but certainly worth asking them. If we agree that we want to go ahead and look at, confirm, some of the understandings that we've got, and, be just a little bit further ahead in knowing what we can or cannot do. Definitely, I mean, we'll be asking them to assist us. To me, no matter what happens, it's a joint responsibility. It's a joint problem. Councillor Shortreed.
When Sean said that there was no crown land, was that just Algonquin Highlands or was that Minden Hills as well?
He
ahead.
said Boschkong, so I'm assuming
That's
that's,
Algonquin Islands.
yeah. If I may just add to the conversation, the assessment, certainly if council's interested in moving forward with that, we can initialize that. As the long-term look at the lake, I'd like to suggest that if that be planned for this year, something else in Chris's work plan is going to be put off, if that's prioritized, because, I mean, his work plan is in place for this year, and it's a full load. We just need that direction from council, I guess, is what I'm suggesting.
Councillor Richards.
I mean, this is a growing concern to me. It's not just Boschkong, Kushag losing their marina. All of our other lakes that are potentially, either they don't have one, or they need a better launch. Docks and landings is becoming a huge undertaking for us everywhere. We need it properly funded. We need a very good plan on its future that is not dependent on private landowners.
No question about it. You're absolutely correct. But in the meantime, we're faced with an immediate problem for a substantial number of taxpayers. And, obviously we need to continue to have discussions with Minden Hills. I think, for us today, we need to decide whether we want to move forward with a consultant to take a look at this further or not. Councillor Shortreed.
I'm okay with the consultant. I just don't want Chris's current workload to change because it's just gonna put everything that's coming down behind. That's everything in docks and landings on our asset management plan is gonna get bumped back if this goes to the top of the pile.
Or we're not saying that the upgrade of the site is going to
No.
go to the top of the pile at all.
I'm just saying though, that's my concern.
Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I'm okay with proceeding with the assessment, so that we know what we're dealing with specifically there. And then, as I've said, I think we need to move forward at a later time. Not to take anything further on Chris's plate this year, but in the
Well,
long-term solution.
That's part of the direction that's set in our strategic plan, that we move forward, looking at docks and landings and parking and, everything associated with it. Because you're right. I mean, it's becoming a much bigger problem as time goes by. Okay, could we have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and to move forward with with an assessment? Counselor Shortreed and Richards. Counselor Perry, sorry.
Will we still reach out to Minden Hills about working together on
Absolutely,
that? Okay.
absolutely, yep. Well, we can include that in the resolution if you'd like.
It's
Is
there.
it- Okay. If you'd like to, Chris.
Sorry. In response, does council want to also consider a response to the letter to the associations? And in this case, I'm considering the expectations around timelines. To communicate that the likelihood of any of these solutions coming to fruition in time for them to be able to take their boats out in the fall is completely unknown.
Well, definitely have to respond to the letter and, you know, we just don't know what's going to be feasible at this point in time. And obviously, there's a willingness on our part to work with Minden Hills to try and find a solution that we can afford and achieve in, you know, some kind of timely manner. But I mean, it really, at this point, it's unknown. So absolutely.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives Parks Recreation Trails Report PRT 624 regarding loss of boat ramp facilities, request for information. And the council directs staff to proceed with collaboration between Minden Hills Township to further investigate any potential options for a boat launch at the 12-Mile Lake Dam location. And that council directs staff to engage a consultant to review the existing boat launch site on Highway 118 and to be funded from the Docks and Landing Reserve.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. I know this is going to be a moving target for a while and that there's going to be, you know, continued anxiety voiced about this. It is a big concern, you know, on the part of the owners, and hopefully we can help find a solution between the two municipalities and the lake associations as well. Okay, next is a discussion about the grand opening for the new park in Dorset and the rec center.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. What I wanted to do at this time is just give council an update on an overview of what it is that we're planning, as well as get some direction on the number of people that we'd like to look to target as far as food services go, and give council an idea of costs that we've found so far as we've been talking to various options for providing food, and a recommendation on how to move forward with an increased budget request. So as council's aware, we've tentatively planned the date of July 27th. At budget time, we had put together a budget option of $5,000 with the direction to assess everything and come back to council with some further ideas as information becomes available. Right now, what our plan is to have, of course, both the Tapscott Lopez Park grand opening associated with the Dorset Recreation Center grand opening, have entertainment at the pavilion in the Tapscott Lopez Park, and food being served there in a barbecue style type serving. The recreation center will be open throughout that. We've been discussing with our recreation committee to have some tours of the facility going on throughout the day from them. The main events happening from 11 to 2. We're working through options and possibilities to have some of our program providers give demonstrations during the grand opening event in the Dorset Recreation Center, for example, like introduction style to things like Tai Chi or pickleball or those types of opportunities. Lunch will be served at noon until 2, and we would have speeches within that time frame from dignitaries. I have looked at a number of different options as far as pricing goes, and I've given an overview here, which is just kind of to give a general idea of what various price points will offer us if we get the event catered, between a fully kind of catered, with servers, and nice displayed food items and various options, down to staff and our committee and volunteers facilitating, serving sandwich trays, fruit trays, dessert trays, etc. Upfront, it was a little bit surprising to see the costs associated with catering an event. I really had no idea that now they'd be in that price range, but we have talked to a number of different options, and they are all in line with one another. So to give that overview, so a catered barbecue style, with a salad and dessert bar ranging in the $30 to $50 per person amount. Now, the low range is kind of in the hamburger and jumbo hot dogs style offering. And by that, I'm not referring to just kind of a package of hot dogs from the grocery store. It's like a jumbo hot dog and a better style burger with toppings and various options. Our mid-range amounts, and there's a lot of different options, but just to give a general idea, you're talking about things like pea meal on a bun or Oktoberfest type sausage. And then high range amounts are getting into pulled pork, steak on a bun, or even a pig roast style option. In our lower end ranges, we've talked to some of our local grocery stores who could cater with platters. And if we went with a sandwich, veggie, fruit, and dessert platters, we're in the $10 to $15 per person range. Our low end amounts would be kind of classic deli style sandwiches and wraps, and then going towards $15 per person is going to add our veggie and fruit and dessert trays, etc. On top of that, we'd offer a variety of drinks, which would be juices, pop water, etc., for an amount of $500. So those amounts relative to the number of people we're looking to target. And I've put a chart there with various amounts based on the number of people to give council an idea. And I think that if we worked with 250 people as a target and council wanted to approve a $35 per person range, we're still going to finalize and make the best use of the budget that we have. So we may be able to find much less than that, but it'll be generally in that price range. And it's all relative to what we're looking at for costs for entertainment as well. Band costs we're looking at are between the $1,500 to $2,000 mark. Once I have this direction, we'll be able to pin everything down. But it is very hard to tell how many people are going to show up. It's a complete guess. But at some point when we're talking about catering, and even if we're talking about selling food, if we wanted to go that direction, we'd still have to have some sort of number in mind that we're targeting. I don't think it's unreasonable to consider 250 people, but it's impossible to tell. I'd be surprised if less than somewhere between 100 and 200 showed up, but again, it's impossible to tell. It is the summer season. Cottagers are going to be there. Typically, as you know, on a day like that, there's already a lot of people milling around town doing their grocery shopping, etc. So you might get people stopping in just for that. And of course, I'm sure a number of people will show up just for the opportunity to view the band. With my recommendation of the $35 per person at 250 people, that would be a budget increase of $6,250. In discussion with the treasurer, that is something that we'd recommend as an end of year assessment with recommendations based on any surplus operating, or if we wanted to look at various reserve options to fund that based on our final numbers. So looking for feedback from council.
A couple of things before I ask for comments or questions. I think in this case, well, first of all, I kind of like the idea of a midpoint you know, I can't see us going to a $50 a person. That sounds a little bit out of sight for me, but some midpoint like pea meal on the bun as opposed to just serving hot dogs, something like that. I don't like the idea necessarily in this case of asking the committee to have to be responsible for serving food or preparing food. I'd like to see it to be catered. I just think that the committee members are going to be required to help in other ways. You know, when you look at the two sites and the fact that we're going to be doing tours and, you know, there's all kinds of things that need to be organized, that I'd like to see council and the committee sort of just looking at those sorts of responsibilities as opposed to trying to serve or have anything to do with food prep. I kind of wonder what's the plan for kids? Because there's going to be a lot of children there, and I think that we need to have some activities and some things, you know, for children. You know, I understand there might be some arrangements about face painting, but are there other activities or things that we're planning for children? And what that might cost? I've got some thoughts on music too, but that we'll leave that for further discussion. Yeah, it's absolutely impossible to determine how many people might show up. You know, it just, it is the busiest time of the year and it could be a lot. But I mean, when it comes to food, you know, it just could be like first come, first serve. We run out of food. And
Mhm.
thoughts, comments? Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, thank you very much. If I could touch on children activities. I haven't included anything in this budget on children's activities. We had been looking at costing as possibilities for things such as face painting. I was also looking at possibilities from the same provider we had at the Snowball, which have a number of different game options. Like one option I was looking at is a basketball style race where there's these basketball nets side by side and there's scoring on the board, et cetera. There's lots of options available. But I had removed that from the consideration based on what we had been finding for food costs and catering costs. So certainly it would be great to have some sort of option for kids there and some sort of game going on. In which case I'd look to one of those companies that we've hired for the Snowball in the past that have been a huge hit and bring something in for them. And $1,500 range would be for something like that, for them to provide staff, et cetera.
I think we have to come up with something for kids. I don't know if it needs to be to that extent, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I know, and when we had initial discussions, we talked about a bouncy castle, and I don't know, I have no idea what that costs. But face painting, I know that the Councillor Shortreed said that she'd seen something about someone from the county who dresses as a clown, does a bit of a magic show and face painting. And that was, did you say it was in the $150 range? Which is not a lot of money. But I really do believe that we've got to include kids when it comes to this. Everybody's going to bring their kids. And I don't think that they care so much about the food as adults might. They want something to do, something to keep them busy and include them. Anyway, thoughts, questions, Councillor Shortreed?
I agree with the mid-range. I did have a question because we're on the kids subject. Should we not maybe have like just hot dogs for kids? Something like that? Instead of having, if it's gonna be like pea meal on a bun, like I don't think we're gonna have kids eating pea meal on a bun, so.
We could have, I mean, see, we could have both.
Yeah, but just like something like hot dogs for kids, just so that, you know, we've got, so I think we'll have a lot of kids. It is the last week of July and there'll be a lot of kids around. So I think something that's more cost effective for kids to eat as well as something to keep them busy. Even if you can just put soccer balls out in the field too, right? There's a big field there to run around in.
You know, we had a similar discussion about the airport event that, you know, there was a number of different food choices that were going to be there, but they were more adult style foods. And ultimately decided that we had to offer hot dogs and hamburgers as well, but go ahead, Chris.
I think that mid-range amount would give us flexibility in talking some of the companies we've been talking to also offer some of those other options for kids. Yeah.
Thoughts? Counselor Berry?
I guess financially, where will this money come from if there was only 5,000 in our current budget, where the difference would come from? Maybe I don't know, I feel like the cost that it's going to cost the township, you know, where does that money come from? And is there something that's gonna come out of recreation, which is what we're sort of celebrating in the end? That's my concern. I guess I'm like, does that mean, you know, we do less for pickleball, or we do less for such and such, you know what I mean? In the increase in the budget.
That's not my sense at all. Obviously, we do have reserves and it could come out of reserves. I'm not hearing that we have to cut back on any planned activities at all.
No, Chris had said in his report that in consultation with the treasurer, at year end, we'll evaluate it. Many times there's a surplus, there's, you know, from additional taxes. So we can assess it at year end and bring it back to council for direction.
Other thoughts about activities, kind of food, kids' activities?
I think, like, I think really showcasing the facility and having, you know, the basketball court set up, or I don't know, showing the library, like that type of thing. I think, in all honesty, a lot of those activities in the summer, like, people want to be outside, so you've got the park across the street. I don't know.
Well, we're celebrating a different park.
Mhm.
To me, I mean, if you're gonna have a the people in Dorset have been waiting a long, long time for this and feel like you know, that they've been without for a long time. And I think we need to do the best job we can. I know this is kind of a, you know, I mean, it's extraordinary money in normal terms. But I do think that we have to, you know, do something that is truly celebratory in nature. Kids don't care about the library. I mean, they'll want to go there, they'll want to have books there, but as part of a celebration, to me, there has to be something for kids. And we need to, you know, build that into the budget. Counselor Richards.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'd rather spend money on the activities and make it more of an event for kids and everyone to come out and enjoy than spend it on food. But I'm happy to go mid-range and do both, but
Mhm.
I think the emphasis should be on the activities.
So would council want to increase the amount being suggested by? It's really difficult to say, but if with some wiggle room, $2,000, I think would provide some wiggle room to be able to act so on top of the 6,250 for children's activities. If we hired somebody to come in with some sort of activity being offered, the challenge with offering programming ourselves is just the people to do it.
Which is kind of my lead in that, you know, I don't want to add too much to the committee members to have to do it, because there will be things for them to do. There's no question about it, but to offer activities, I guess that's why I was sort of, you know, like this idea that, you know, that this, I think this is a lady in Wilberforce who does a bit of a magic show and does face painting and is dressed like a clown. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. It doesn't sound like $1,500 or $2,000. I think that there's ways that we can offer things for kids that don't cost that much money.
Mm-hmm.
Madam CAO?
So I think we've heard what council's looking for, and rather than council trying to plan the event, if council's okay with approving the additional funds, then Chris has heard what council's looking for. I think we can figure that part out.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions, concerns? Counselor Berry.
I think I echo Counselor Richards in regards to, I would rather, like, I think even when it says low end, you know, salad bar, or sorry, low end things such as, you know, trays of food, platters, that type of thing. I still think that's a wonderful offering to the community, and I would rather see that happen and activities versus going to a higher end food that kids aren't gonna care about anyway, you know what I mean? I definitely support there being food, but how high end?
Well, that's where we kind of were, like mid, let's just not go beyond mid-range
Mhm.
and see what we can get. And obviously there has to be you know, like Counselor Shortreed said, you know, we might have female on a bun, but we'd also have hot dogs for kids. Counselor Shortreed.
And you have to remember, it's the rec center reopening, which is used mainly by adults. They're the ones. So yes, I can see we need things for kids to do, but this is celebrating the reopening of the rec center, which is used by so many adults that, you know.
We're
there.
celebrating the park as well. It's
And
not
park,
just the rec
yes,
center.
true.
And there needs to be activities in both places.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, we've heard what the CAO has said. Are you willing to approve the additional expenditure and see what we can do within that? Have a mover and a seconder to that effect. Councillors Richards and Shortreed. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about this as time goes by.
Moved by Counselor Richards, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives Parks Recreation Trails Report PRT 724 regarding Dorset Recreation Center and Tapscott Lopes grand opening event cost considerations for information, and that council approves an increased budget expense of an additional $8,250 for a grand opening event.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think we might take just a 10-minute break. Welcome back. And next on the agenda is environmental business. And we have a report on single tier waste management service delivery. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Just bringing forward, there had the single tier waste management review final report had been presented to county council on April 10th, and they recommend, or the resolution that came back from that was to bring the report and the questions from that back to the lower tier councils for comments and questions, and then this will go back to county council again on May 22nd. So I've provided you with all of the details of the presentations from Dillon Consulting, the report and staff report that was brought to county council. And I think best I can answer any questions and take any comments that you would like brought forward.
I found it interesting that the options that were provided by the consultant were all kind of geared in one direction, and that was for the county to assume responsibility for waste management. I think that generally speaking, county council were not entirely happy with the results of the report. I think that there were some factors that didn't really come out of the report, and that may be our own fault for not including them in the RFP or asking in more detail for what we were looking for. But there was a lot of financial information that I sensed that members of council were looking for. There were also issues of liability and inequities, let's say, depending on how far ahead. For instance, we've spent lots of money on our Maple Lake site. And have a long life at our Maple Lake site, and how does that compare? How would that impact us if we were required to take waste from other municipalities, and vice versa? You know, if there was a substantial liability attached to a site in one of the other municipalities, how does that impact us? So those sorts of questions really weren't answered. Although it had been something that the lower tiers had approved county council to work on, I think that the county council was looking for input from the lower tiers as to you know, what they thought about the report. From my perspective, I could see two things happening. The one thing that I could see happening would be the hiring of an individual at the county level to assist in further collaboration. I think that person would work with the four people that have been part of the service delivery review working team. That person might help with going forward with items like you know, the bag limits and the price of, you know, of assorted things. We have not yet been able to kind of equalize that across the county. On the other hand, our working committee could continue to do that work. I kind of feel a little bit badly because, you know, a lot of the service delivery review work that has been done has been in addition to work that everybody's already got. It's kind of corner of the desk, you know, it's an added load. I'm quite sure that because of the level of enthusiasm by folks like yourself that have been working on that, you know, I mean, you'll continue to look for efficiencies and, you know, partnerships that we can enter into, because there's been a lot of good work done in that regard. Anyway, comments. The one other thing that I would say is that that was drilled home in my mind was the amount of money, and this is something that you've raised a number of times, the amount of money that's being spent in the county and by each municipality on waste management, and that it's too much. And there's going to be greater expectations put on us, greater costs, and we need to look for cost savings wherever we can. Anyway, comments, thoughts from members of council? Council Barry.
Without echoing what you're saying, I do think that there is still maybe not a single tier approach, but I do think there's like a collaborative and cohesion approach that's already sort of naturally happening. And even though it's maybe not specified if that's by county or the three options, committee, coordinate, that type of thing, similar to the library board, I just want to see the work that's being done to continue to be done. Like, I think there's an opportunity for days and times to be cohesive and garbage limits to be cohesive and accepted materials at all the landfills to be somewhat cohesive. So I see moving that cohesion forward, maybe not a single tier project, but overall it would be cohesive. That's kind of where I stand.
Other thoughts? Counselor Shortreed?
I'm gonna echo the same thoughts as Councillor Berry at this time. I think that collaborating with the other municipalities in the county is working. And like you said, with our new Maple Lake, I think status quo is best.
Well, status quo, but keeping in mind that, this is a group that's been working away based on the service delivery review, that they're going to continue to need direction from us about the things that we're looking for. Because we're not, I'm sensing from what I heard at county council and from what I'm hearing here, and I've heard from other councillors in other municipalities, is we're not ready to go to single tier or prepared to go to single tier at this point in time. So I think we need to, make sure that message is clear in how we see ourselves proceeding. Basically along the same lines that we've been working for quite some time now. Councillor Richards.
I think it's great through the service delivery review that our managers are working together in all departments, and I think that they're doing a great job. I don't see that we'd get more of a benefit in moving it to single tier. So I think we should continue as we are. As far as hiring someone at county, I'm not convinced that right now is the time to spend the money that way. So I'd like us to just stay as we are and continue on course.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive Melissa's report and to recommend that we continue with the status quo? Councillors Richards and Berry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 1924 regarding the single tier waste management service delivery review final report for information, and further council directs staff to continue to collaborate with the local municipalities regarding waste management initiatives.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Melissa. Next up, Public Works. Good morning, Mr. Thorne.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
First up, how are things going at the Dorset Rec Center?
Things are going very well. Just a little bit of an update today is that the forms for the exterior walkway and the entranceway have been put in place. They're just waiting for inspection. Should the inspection, be approved, which we don't see why it wouldn't be, then concrete would be poured towards the end of this week. So things are moving along very well. The bit of rain that we had earlier in the week slowed stuff down a little bit, but crews are still moving forward. On the interior, it's continuing to clean and just do the small touch-ups, install a fireplace, the TV brackets, some mirrors in the bathrooms. It's coming along very well.
Any questions? As far as rain, that's it for rain for the week, right?
I hope so. We have a big event coming up, so.
Okay, next is airport committee update. So it's just a set of minutes. Unless there's anything that you wanted to add as far as the airport.
As far as the committee minutes goes, no additions on my part.
Any questions on the minutes? Councillor Berry.
Just wondering, I know at the last fly-in, you guys did have a rain date, and given this weekend's weather status, I wondered if that was a discussion in future events, if planning an alternate dates were considered.
It was a discussion and they decided against rain days. It's just too hard when everybody has an expectation of a certain day and, you know, you end up getting rained out and you don't really know what's gonna happen the next day either. So, they decided it was just kind of too much trouble to plan. And it would be, you know, sort of not a flop, but half of what you had intended the event to be. Really? Did you have a comment?
I just want to clarify that the minutes state that it's September 7th, 2023. So I just want to clarify that that's not the date. That
No,
the meeting
the
is happening.
date is the 27th of September, I think.
No, 27th of April. 2024.
Let's say that again. The minutes say,
September 7th, 2023.
oh, the date of the meeting.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's using a bit of a template
at the
that's,
top of the meeting, it says special meeting, September 7th, 2023, 4:00. It says March 14th. Oh, right.
okay, so we just need to make a note about the correct date.
We
Any other
discussed-
questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the minutes as amended? Councillors Richards and Barry?
Moved by Council Richards, second by Council Barry, be resolved that the March 14th, 2024 Airport Advisory Committee minutes be received for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is your report on an operational review at the airport.
Yes, so as we've been going through the airport this year, updating information and plans and things of that nature. We came along to a lot of the plans and manuals at the airport that we would like to have updated. Through the report, you can see that the CARS regulations are kind of, they don't really apply to our aerodrome, but it is best practice to pick and choose some of those items from the CARS so that we have a foundation to work from. And I would really like to propose that we have this consultant company come in and help us create that foundation. We do have plans in place, but it would be nice to get them updated so like, again, like I said, we have a spot to stand on so that when we move forward, this is why we're doing what we're doing at the airport versus the manager just saying, this is how we're going to operate. I think this would be a good opportunity to rely on those, that information that they can provide and their knowledge and experience with this project.
Any comments you want to make on the single source? This is a company you've worked with already?
That's correct. So yes, as I am requesting a single source, and as the report will reflect is that we have worked with this company in the past. This will be the second time we've worked on our OLS survey with them, which has been completed this year. We're just working through the details of it right now, and I'll be coming back with that plan to move forward on it as well. We've had really good success with this company. They've been great to deal with. They've been very helpful so far, and with their knowledge of our airport, I think there would be a benefit to have them perform this project.
You have to agree and thank you for taking the initiative. I think it's a good opportunity for us to bring things up to date. Questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward? Councillors Short-Reed and Barry.
Moved by Council Short-Reed, second by Council Barry. Be it resolved, the council receives Public Works Report PW 1224 regarding airport operational maintenance review proposal for information. Council directs staff to seek professional assistance from VNG Consulting to support phase 1 of the update and development of the new operational and maintenance plans. And council authorizes a single source procurement from Aviva NG Consulting at a cost of $14,785 plus applicable tax for phase 1 of the project. And further, that council hereby authorizes the CAO to sign the required documents and or agreements.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Nothing under fire services or finance. Under administrative business, the First item is a set of minutes, looks like from February for the Stanhope Museum. Any comments or questions or additional information you might want to bring up about Stanhope? Counselor Berry?
Yeah, I believe these minutes have already been addressed. I remember talking about these things during budget time. I think the clerk said that they just hadn't been officially put on the agenda, but all of this has been discussed, and I think if there's any questions, I think it's all been covered.
Anything that has come up since then
Yeah.
that? Okay, if there's no questions, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the minutes? Counselor Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short-Reed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives the February 20th, 2024 Stanhope Museum Committee meeting minutes.
All in favor? It's carried. Next is a set of minutes from March the 26th from the Dorset Museum. Counselor Berry?
I did speak with the CAO about the one area on this in regards to the workroom wall and some inconsistencies with the cracking paint and that. And our Public Works person, Scott Bond, has looked at this and is going to further address it during the roof project, which I believe the RFP for that project is going out soon, to my understanding. But I would just like to note that I would like more looking at this done just in regards to any water damage that possibly could be there, especially if the RFP takes a little bit and the work takes a while. Just, you know, we could have a big rain event and it continues to cause damage. I just don't want to see anything happen there. But
We're creating another mold problem.
yeah.
Okay, so noted. Any other questions or comments about the Dorset Museum? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the minutes? Counselor Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short-Reed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved that council receives the March 26th, 2024 Dorset Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is planning. Good morning again, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Well, again, Mayor and Council.
So first is your department update. Any highlights?
No, nothing to note, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on the department update? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the planning department update? Councilors Berry and Short-Reed.
Moved by Counselor Berry, second by Counselor Short-Reed. Be resolved, council receives planning report PL 3224 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Committee of Adjustment update and minutes from April 12th. Any questions or comments? To say it was a little bit more interesting meeting than some. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes? Councilors Richards and Short-Reed.
Moved by Counselor Richards, seconded by Counselor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that council receives the April 12th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, your report on cutting red tape and proposed updates to the provincial policy statement. I've got to say that every time the government decides they're going to cut red tape, they make more red tape, but that's just me.
Yes, so thank you. This is a summary of Bill 185, which is the Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act. It was introduced in April of this year, and it's open for comment at this time. It makes changes to 15 acts, existing acts. The ones that I've highlighted are the Development Charges Act, the Municipal Act, and the Planning Act. And unfortunately, the highlights in my report did not carry forward to the council agenda, but I will just touch on those. a majority of these changes will not have a significant impact on smaller rural communities such as Algonquin Highlands. They're more geared towards large urban centers. But that being said, some things to note are the province is proposing to prohibit third-party appeals of official plan amendments and rezonings. So that would be members of the public not being able to appeal a decision of council with respect to those applications. They're also proposing to make pre-application consultations with municipalities voluntary and not mandatory. For our applications that we see, there's usually just a fairly brief pre-consultation that I undertake with applicants, whereas a large urban community would have a much more substantial pre-consultation requirement. So I don't see any significant impact for Algonquin Highlands with respect to these changes. They're also proposing to remove the fee refund provisions that they originally established. So if a decision was not made within a certain time frame, a certain percentage of the application fee would be refunded. But again, all our applications are processed within the legislated time frame, so that's never been an issue for us. So if there's any questions on that part specifically, I'd be happy to answer, or I can move into the provincial policy statement portion. At this
Any
time.
questions on that part of the report? Somehow doesn't seem really democratic, but I guess there's really not much we can say about that. So if there's no other comments or questions on that portion of it, carry on.
Okay. So yes, the province also released an updated draft of the provincial policy statement. It was fairly similar to the original draft released in 2023, which was presented to council at that time. I did note a couple changes. The first being that municipalities are now required to plan for a minimum of a 20-year horizon, but not more than a 30-year horizon for residential land supply. But in our case, we have significant amounts of land available for residential development, so it's not a concern. And then the last change I noted was in the previous draft, related to rural areas, in the previous draft, it identified multi-lot residential development as a potential use. However, in this latest draft, it no longer is. So we would not be able to do large plans of subdivision in rural lots, but our official plan already prohibits such activities. So I don't have any concerns with the changes that are being made there. One thing to note though, and it was addressed in my previous report, is that the township's official plan is due to be updated. However, it's my recommendation, and council supported at that time, we do not proceed with that until this new provincial policy statement has been approved and the county official plan has been approved, to avoid duplicating the process. Because should we update our official plan now, we'd have to start that process all over again once those other things happen. So.
And because it's still in the proposed stage, we can't really, there's no guarantee that all of this would go through.
Exactly, yeah.
I do like to see that that there's some more flexibility with respect to expanding settlement areas. I think that's probably countywide, that's a good thing. Any other questions on that? Councilor Barry?
When it says providing flexibility for municipalities to allow for more residential development in rural settlements and multi-lot residential development on rural lands, including more servicing flexibility, is the servicing flexibility talking about like shared septic, shared water?
Yes, that is something they've addressed in the new PPS. Is so they have a hierarchy of preferred ways to service lots, and the first being municipal water and sewer, which obviously we don't have, and then shared services, and then private well and septic.
Okay.
Okay,
And then
go
I
ahead.
have a second question in regards to maintaining a land supply. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean having a list of what the township has that's available, or like a list of what's available within the municipality in regards to where things could be built. I guess I want clarification on if it's township owned property that we're supposed to be maintaining a list of, or if it's property.
Privately owned,
Yeah.
undeveloped
Yeah.
residential property.
So it is privately owned, individual property. So the county official plan has a list of, possible lots that could be developed. I don't think they identify the property specifically, but it's a supply of land that could be developed. So, for a large rural area like this, there's obviously severances that could take place to create new lots. So it's never been a concern as far as creating lots for residential development.
But
Go ahead.
but if it is privately owned, it's up to the private landowner if they want to do that.
Oh, most
No,
definitely.
there's no. Okay, I just wasn't really sure what it meant by the supply list, what that really meant, but that clarifies that.
Any other questions?
One more.
Okay,
In regards to stormwater and watershed planning, what does that mean? What are they asking? I understand we have stormwater plans, but I don't know how in-depth we have for watershed plans.
Sorry, is that in the
Sorry, I
PPS
think-
changes?
That's in,
to the next.
The
to
next
subsequent
section?
section.
or maybe even further down.
That's under your item number 3,
Oh, yes.
infrastructure.
Right. Well, that's wastewater. And then the other one is somewhere else.
Yeah, so with that requirement, it's not unlike what site plan approval would capture in today's planning world, where you'd have to have detailed stormwater management plans for certain properties. But again, with our large rural lots, it's never been a significant concern. It's more, again, where it's all these hard surfaces like parking areas, where you have to really make sure that there's no significant impacts to offsite factors when looking at this kind of development.
And then the watershed planning?
The watershed planning, I believe, was more to do with conservation authorities and the changes that the province had proposed with those. But I can look a little bit further into that to confirm.
Well, there is a bit of a meeting being scheduled with the Upper Trent Water Management group and the CEWF and other associated bodies about establishing a watershed council for the Trent system. So we will be hearing more about that depending on the levels of support for that. Carry on.
That was it for the changes that I wanted to highlight, but if there's any other questions, I'm certainly happy to answer those.
Any other questions on Sean's report? Thanks. It's a good detailed report.
Thank you.
Shows where our impacts are and what little levels of control we have. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive Sean's report? Councillors Barry and Richard. Or was there another? Did you have another question?
Yeah, just there's one here it's going to require municipalities to prepare for the impacts of changing climate and develop an approach to reduce greenhouse gas and improve air quality. I mean, we have a climate change plan within the county that each municipality is following. But aside from that, what exactly is that being asked of? Especially like air quality, like how are we?
So the PPS is a very high level document that's supposed to help inform municipal decisions as it's scoped down to what things we can actually control. So it's essentially directing us to keep in mind that any decisions we make should be in the, best interest of the environment. So a lot of the things we have in place already would address that.
Okay.
So we do have a climate change plan, an action plan, and continue to work with that. And okay, so I think we've got a mover and a seconder.
Moved by Counselor Berry, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives planning report PL 3324 regarding Bill 185, cutting red tape to build more homes Act 2024 and proposed updates to the provincial policy statement for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
And next are external board meetings. First up is the Dorset Partnership.
We're still waiting on a meeting for the partnership. Carry on to the hub.
Yep,
The hub was just Tuesday morning. Their nurse practitioner is currently pregnant and due the end of the summer, so they are struggling to find a nurse practitioner to cover her maternity leave. They're looking at locums between doctors and nurse practitioners to cover that leave. And they are very thankful to the township for their fiber. They've said it made a world of difference for all three of them working in the office. Lake of Bays has contributed their portion the same as we do. It's going towards an RN working at the hub for the summer to be able to see more patients throughout the summer months. So they're doing amazing, really amazing. They have, their roster is 700 patients with a stack this big of patients waiting.
any questions on the hub? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the, hang on, minutes? Okay. Upper Trent Water Management.
So our next meeting is scheduled for May 13th, which will be with the Muskoka Watershed Council. I believe an invitation was sent out to county council members,
To,
county council? To,
yeah,
go or
to,
just
well,
certain-
I know an invitation was sent out to the four mayors.
Oh.
I don't know if it was sent out to all of county council or what invitations were sent to, you know, the lower tiers. I believe that other associated groups like Q-Links and CHA have also been involved, invited to the meeting. I don't know what other groups, but it'll be interesting to hear the presentation from Muskoka.
that's fine. I take those.
Okay. Anything on the Watershed Council?
Not right now. No.
Okay, nothing on the OPP Detachment Board. I think that the members who have been appointed to the board so far are required to do training. I know that I think most of us have completed it, but there's been no date set yet for a detachment board meeting. No updates on EORN either, other than the fact that the chair of the EORN board has resigned. And has moved from being the mayor of his municipality to being the CAO of another municipality. So there's some changes there. So yeah, I think that they're going to be having an AGM fairly shortly, and we'll see what comes of that. Deputy Mayor Dayu is not here to give any update on the library board. I'm not aware of any updates there. I know that they're working away, that they're delivering supplies to for the Dorset library to be opened, and so I'll let you know about that. Nothing on community safety and well-being. I think that Deputy Mayor Dayu has sent out updates from the on watershed information, so we received that. And as far as an update from County Council, obviously we've spoken about the waste management study that was done. The other thing that I might bring to council's attention is that they're planning to do a strategic plan, and they're putting out an RFP for a strat plan for county council. And there's a number of options that are being looked at and will ask to be bid on, whether it's a full and open community consultation or whether we just include stakeholders, or, you know, whether it's totally in-house. So we'll, you know, see what comes back to us. So I'm looking forward to that process. Is there any questions about county council? Okay, nothing under general business. Are there any notice of motion? Notices of motion? Hearing none. Was there any interest on any of the correspondence? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence listing? Councilors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Richards, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council receives the May 2nd, 2024 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. No closed session. So next are the bylaws. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the bylaws, Councillor Shortreed and Barry?
By Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed. 2024-45 being a bylaw to exempt the Township of Algonquin Highlands from the Line Fences Act. 2024-46 being a bylaw to impose a municipal accommodation tax on short-term rental accommodations.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-47 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? It's carried. Finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Richards, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:03 a.m.
All in favor? That's carried.